On February 7, 2021, in Charleston, South Carolina, an elderly widow signed a new will leaving her entire estate to her live-in caregiver. At least, that's what the document showed. The timestamp on the printed copy read 2:14 a.m., a time when, according to medical records, she was heavily sedated and unable to stand without assistance. Within a month, she was dead. And the question that haunted investigators wasn't just who changed the will, but who needed it changed in the middle of the night. The widow's name was Margaret Ellison, 76 years old, retired history professor, widely respected in Charleston's academic community. She lived in a restored colonial home overlooking the Ashley River. Margaret had 2 adult children. Lena Ellison, 48, lived in Boston, corporate attorney. Estranged from her mother for years after disagreements about lifestyle and finances. And Thomas Ellison, 45, who lived locally. A real estate investor whose ventures had been unstable for nearly a decade. Margaret also employed a live-in caregiver named Daniel Ruiz, 33 years old, certified nursing assistant, hired in late 2019 after Margaret's mobility declined due to arthritis and minor strokes. Daniel was attentive, quiet, observant. Margaret trusted him enough to grant limited financial authority for daily expenses. But trust, especially near the end of life, becomes currency. On February 6, 2021, Margaret was admitted briefly to a local clinic for dehydration and dizziness. Medical records show she was prescribed a mild sedative to regulate anxiety. She returned home that evening. At 2:14 a.m. on February 7th, a document titled Last Will and Testament of Margaret Ellison was printed from her home office printer. The document left 90% of her estate, valued at approximately $4.8 million, to Daniel Ruiz. Thomas was to receive a modest trust. Lena was excluded entirely. The will appeared legally formatted, signed, witnessed electronically through a remote notary system. Margaret died 28 days later from what was ruled a natural cardiac complication. At first, nothing seemed unusual, until Lena requested a review. Lena didn't challenge the will emotionally, she challenged it logically. Her mother had always insisted estate planning discussions be done during daylight hours with attorneys present, never spontaneously, never privately. Digital forensics revealed something striking. The will document was created on Margaret's personal laptop at 1:58 a.m., but keyboard pressure analysis indicated irregular typing rhythm. Specifically, consistent pauses at complex legal phrases. The pattern matched Daniel's typing style more closely than Margaret's. Margaret's medical records confirmed she had taken her sedative at 9:47 p.m. By midnight, she would have been cognitively impaired. Security logs from the home showed Daniel's keycard accessed the upstairs office at 1:52 a.m. He claimed he was retrieving medication, but medication was stored downstairs. Even more concerning, the remote notary service logged an IP address originating from Margaret's Wi-Fi, but the video session lasted only 90 seconds. Too short for a full legal verification. The witness signatures were digital stamps, not live signatures. Investigators subpoenaed Daniel's bank records. 2 days before the will was printed, Daniel transferred $18,000 from his savings into a new legal consultation fund. The attorney he consulted specialized in estate documentation. When questioned, Daniel claimed Margaret had asked him to help update her will. He said she felt abandoned by her children. But text messages recovered from Margaret's phone told a different story. 3 days before the document was printed, Margaret texted Lena, "I'm reconsidering everything. I want you both present when I make changes." She never scheduled that meeting. because she never knew the change had already been made. Then forensic analysts uncovered something critical. The printer's internal memory log showed two versions of the will printed that night. Version 1 at 2:03 a.m., version 2 at 2:14 a.m. The first version included equal distribution between Lena and Thomas. The second, the final signed version, removed them entirely, meaning someone revised it within 11 minutes. Margaret had severe arthritis in her hands. Typing and editing complex documents in 11 minutes at 2 a.m. was medically improbable. This wasn't rage. It wasn't sudden violence. It was proximity. Daniel lived in the house. He managed medication. He handled groceries. He listened to Margaret's frustrations about her children. Over time, he positioned himself not just as caregiver, but as confidant. Psychologists refer to this dynamic as emotional dependency substitution. When biological bonds weaken, proximity fills the void. Daniel likely believed he deserved compensation, perhaps even believed he was more loyal than her children. But belief doesn't equal entitlement. Investigators also uncovered another motive. Daniel had recently accumulated gambling debt, over $62,000 owed to offshore betting accounts. Time was running out. Opportunity lived upstairs. Margaret's autopsy initially ruled natural causes, but toxicology re-examination showed slightly elevated sedative levels on the night before her death. Not lethal, but enough to deepen sleep, enough to reduce responsiveness. Daniel claimed dosage adjustments were routine. However, medication logs showed an extra dose administered without physician authorization. Not enough to cause death directly, but enough to impair judgment in the weeks leading up to it. The prosecution argued that Daniel's manipulation began with emotional isolation and ended with document control. Margaret didn't die by violence. She died believing her estate was unchanged. Daniel assumed, once she passed, the will would secure his future. He underestimated digital evidence. He underestimated printer memory logs. He underestimated his own typing rhythm. The courtroom in Charleston filled quietly. Daniel maintained he acted under Margaret's direction. But the timeline spoke louder. Sedative, keycard access, document creation, version change, bank consultation, debt motive. The jury deliberated for 14 hours. Verdict: guilty of financial exploitation of an elderly person, fraud, and forgery. The court invalidated the fraudulent will. Margaret's estate reverted to her prior, legally verified document. Daniel received 12 years in prison. At sentencing, Lena spoke calmly. "My mother taught history for 40 years. She believed truth survives documentation." She was right. Daniel believed 2:14 a.m. was quiet enough to rewrite the future. He believed sedation meant silence. He believed proximity meant ownership. But karma doesn't sleep. It waits in metadata. It waits in printer logs. It waits in the small digital trails left behind. He changed the will in the dark, but the timestamp never changed. If this case made you think about how trust can be manipulated behind closed doors, subscribe to The Hidden Truth, because sometimes the most dangerous decisions aren't made in anger. They're printed in the middle of the night.